So if you go in, I put it under technical SEO,
Okay.
and there's the website launch checklist and the website design best practices.
Oh, that's
Okay.
good.
Nice.
Okay.
Nice.
So whenever I have, because I don't build websites, whenever I work with a designer developer, I give them both. Here's what a good website looks like from an SEO perspective. That's the website design best practices. Because this is what we're going to need out of you to build.
Yeah.
But I also give them the website launch checklist, because I'm saying this is when we launch immediately, this is what I'm working through. And I want you to know how I will be evaluating a website upon launch, because that helps the developer understand that, oh, a couple things. Number one, how they're going to be judged for success, but also making it very clear what we're going to be looking at, because I am not a fan of launching websites at low traffic times, mostly because to me, a website launch is an all hands on deck event. I need the developer present, the client present, and me present, and to find that time when we could all three be looking at the website. And the reason is, from an SEO perspective, we got to catch any error before Google does. Because if Google indexes an error, it's going to be really hard to unindex it. But if we use the web design best practices, we're setting ourselves up for success. And the website launch checklist has two phrases. One is, this is the stuff we got to have in line before. And then one is, the other half of it is, literally when you push the launch button, we are starting and checking these things. So I would love for you to review these. And if you have anything that I'm missing, or if something's not clear, if you can leave a comment at the bottom of the post for me.
Okay, Brian, you want to do that? And I'll look through it too.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
so this is one of our goals this quarter, is to go through all of your the plan and see what we're missing and what we're doing right, what we're doing wrong in our current SEO.
Okay, great, great. I look forward to your input as well, as you encounter things that are unclear, because I know they're in there. I laugh about this document, the website design best practices, because it's almost as if every time I write it, I give it to a developer, the developer finds a way around what I've recommended.
Oh, you mean they don't do it? Oh, so you don't, oh, okay. So what that means, David, is that, do you have an audit process?
What do you mean by an audit process?
So you're working with a web designer, right? And you give them this document and you tell them to do all this stuff. An audit process would be, oh, I better independently check that the guy did what he's supposed to frickin' do.
Typically, I recommend several check-ins during the process, and I want to look at the code. So I'll look at the wireframe, right? And I'm going to look at design practices. And almost universally, the wireframe problem is they've done it desktop first design rather than mobile first design.
Okay.
All right, almost always. We got to rethink the way we do it. Google's mobile first. We have to think mobile first on a design perspective. Then once we get and look for calls to action and blocks of text and just stuff that's designed that once. And so I want to be part of the the wireframe approval process.
Okay.
Second of all, I recommend at least one check-in before launch to look at the code as rendered.
Okay.
On a dev server. So I can potentially, understanding that, hey, this isn't the final form, don't be have too big of a problem, David. But just knowing, hey, we're using a JavaScript framework that's not crawlable or something like that,
Mhm.
that somebody read, oh, Google can read this because I read in one article somewhere, no. But sorry.
I was gonna say, have you ever, so I'll go through this and Brian will too, but have you ever thought of offering this as a service?
Oh, I do it all the time.
No, but I know you do it, but do you offer it as a service and advertise it and all that? Do you?
You mean separately other than clients?
Yeah, it's like,
Yeah.
hey, for $200 or 500 or whatever it is, I'll do an SEO audit.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I do it through Reliable Acorn,
Yeah. Okay.
right? Because
Yeah.
that's my main business.
Yeah.
But I've been hired for that explicit purpose. Yeah, many times.
Okay.
And it's a thankless job, frankly, because your job is to go in and say, hey, Captain Hindsight here, you should have done it this way,
Mhm.
Sure.
right? This is not a very grateful job. But
Yeah.
like the last important piece of this that I
Captain
always ask is I ask for an audit right before launch. So in other words, I ask for the developers to be done. Give me a week after the developers are hands off for me to look at the dev server before you launch.
Okay.
And
Mhm.
I can that prevent, because again, we have to catch a problem before Google does. So especially a really big website, I want to make sure there's not a fundamental problem going on here. And now, not everyone's willing or able to give me that. But if they won't give me that, then I absolutely fall on the sword and insist that all hands are available upon launch, including the dev team, to fix problems as we find them. Because we are going to find problems.
Yeah.
It's okay. So I joke like this because it's developers have one perspective to success of a website launch. That is, does it work?
Mhm.
Does
Right.
it look good? Does it render as I'm expecting it to render? That's success to dev, even a
Right.
designer. For me as the SEO, success is how does Google look at it?
Yeah.
And devs don't always know how Google looks at a piece. And sometimes they think that's outside my scope. So SEO is an add-on service that you're paying for. So they don't think about it that way. But my job is to be the Google advocate. So you might have made
Right.
decisions to update and change all the URLs and not tell me.
Mhm.
And I'll be like, whoa, stop everything. We got to put 1,000 redirects in place.
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, hmm.
So,
Well, I'll just say something. So, what happened recently, and Brian knows this, is we had this strangest thing. Had a client did their website years ago, and then they hired another marketing firm to do their website, but they still wanted us to host it. I'm like, okay, but let me look at it first. But essentially, yeah, they redid it and everything, but they are a marketing firm, and I don't guess they're doing SEO, but Brian, it might be good for us in the next couple of weeks to test out David's best practices against the new straightsource.com design. And then we can do that. And then we need to do it against our Verdant Tarps design as well.
Yeah.
I
Yeah, go ahead, Tricia.
I would, I mean, I know you're doing that, but in the future, I would be a little bit leery of just doing the hosting when you were doing
Yeah.
everything, because I'm almost afraid that so what happens if an issue comes and they're saying, well, it's your hosting, and you're like,
I know.
know that it's not.
I know, and
That's just,
you're right. And normally I don't do it. This is
Yeah.
because a long-term client. And
yeah, I
it's
know
a
how it is.
relatively simple website. I don't anticipate too many problems, although we ran into one that was crazy,
Mhm.
idiot. They relocated the content directory to instead of WP-content. They relocated it. You can do that with WordPress in a in a different place. And so Brian and I were talking about it, and Brian said, yeah, it looks like they do, that's an old practice for
Yeah.
security reasons.
Yeah.
Oh.
Mm,
Mhm.
So instead of bots looking at WP-content, it's at content and somewhere
Yeah.
else. And but yeah, but Nathan was saying, you know, everything is smart enough now to crawl.
Yeah.
Yes.
yeah.
So yeah, so it'll be good to do that.
Yeah.
But that'll be good for a client to so that they get an independent view from us of, hey, did this new company do what they said they were going to do?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think you guys as a web dev shop should invest in a copy of Screaming Frog
Mm-hmm.
and get a copy of their site before.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
then crawl it with it. Because so,
Yeah.
you know, when I write Curious Ants, I write it because I want to focus on free tools and not try to get everybody to buy the expensive tools. But this process is I use it as written using Screaming Frog because I kind of don't know how else to do it and keep up with all the URLs.
Yeah.
And so what I will do is get a copy of the site before the launch,
Mhm.
get a copy of the site afterwards, and then you find things like, oh my gosh, they turned on the feature in Yoast to remove stop words. Now all the URLs are changed.
Oof.
You know, it sounded good. It's in the SEO plugin. It must be right. And it maybe is fine, but now you've changed all your URLs. And so now you got to put a bunch of redirects in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Things like that
Yeah.
are
crazy.
well-intended accidents that,
Yeah.
if there's one thing that's super, super important on launching new websites is, unless there's a really, really super good reason, don't change the URLs.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
and my say change, I mean slash or not at the end. You know, so many websites tanked because they messed up their HTTPS transition. And that one little S in there screwed everything up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think
Yeah.
that's the most important thing.